Okay. So yesterday we basically spoke about why would you need a VMware environment? What are the challenges that you will have if you are running a complete physical infrastructure? We spoke about the terms hypervisor. We then spoke about sharing of resources, how it is done on ESXi. We then spoke about overcommitment. Okay. And then we basically looked at the ESXi architecture. We basically looked at, how type 1 hypervisor will basically get deployed and, how would you start consuming it. Okay. So now I would like to talk about that in VMware, we know that the type 1 hypervisor that we have, it is basically called ESXi. Okay. Now, what is the full form of ESXi? So ESXi basically stands for Elastic Sky X Integrated. This is what it basically means. Okay. Now, let me give you a history of ESXi. Okay, let's talk about that, how this product has evolved. So in 2001 or in 2002, around that year, VMware wanted to launch their hypervisor. And they were basically looking for an operating system, that they could use and they could, integrate their hypervisor capabilities. So you basically had either Windows or Linux, the two options, which were available for them to use. So what they did was they basically reached out to Red Hat and they said Red Hat and they told Red Hat that, we would like to use their operating system. Red Hat said, that's fine, give me money and, you can do that. So they started paying Red Hat. And what they did was that in Red Hat ISO, they basically merged hypervisor capabilities. So they took the Red Hat operating system, they merged hypervisor capabilities, and they called it ESX. ESX, as I mentioned, it basically stands for Elastic Sky X. Okay. And they rolled out the product. Now, there were a lot of challenges, with ESX. What the challenges were with the product, let me talk about that. So the first challenge that they had, and that was the biggest one, is that they had to pay royalty to Red Hat because you were using you were using a Red Hat software. So you basically had to give Red Hat money for every deployment. So this was the biggest hurdle that they had. Second, they were dependent on Red Hat. So if Red Hat found a bug, if Red Hat released a patch, then VMware had to also include that patch because they were dependent on Red Hat. The booting time was very high. When you powered on, an ESX server, it would take close to about 6 minutes to boot up. And that is a very long time, back then for a server to take 6 minutes to boot up. And then there were a lot of unwanted services, which were running during the deployment. So these were the few issues, that they had with ESX. So they had to come up with something and they wanted to do away with ESX. So what they did was they basically downloaded Linux, the free operating system. And in Linux, they merged hypervisor capabilities and they called it ESXi. Okay. So in ESX, they were running a complete Red Hat operating system. In ESXi, they basically downloaded Linux, merged hypervisor capabilities, and rolled it out by the name of ESXi. Okay. Here, they were not paying anything to Red Hat because they had done away with Red Hat. They were not dependent on Red Hat on any way. They were managing the patches and the upgrades, as per they feel like. The booting time had significantly gone down, and the number of unwanted services or which were activated, those had also gone down. So now VMware had better control about their hypervisor, which earlier they were lacking. Now, let me talk about the versions of the ESXi as they rolled out. So you had, at a very broad level, if I talk about, you had ESX 1.0. So if I talk about ESX, so you had 1.0, then you had 2.0, then you had 3.0, 3.5, 4.0, and 4.1. After 4.1, ESX was end of life. There was no more ESX, that was rolled out. Okay, ESX was basically history now. And then what they did was they rolled out ESXi. So when they rolled out ESXi, they basically started off with version 4.0, 4.1, 5.0, 5.1, 5.5, 6.0, 6.5, 6.7, 7.0, and the latest being 8.0. So these are the versions that you have in the ESXi. So ESXi is the only available product now, which is the type 1 hypervisor that you can get from VMware, and you can work on it. Okay. I basically started working at this version. This was my first version when I basically started working in 2010. So there have been a lot of changes in ESX. I mean, it has gone through a lot of different hoops and circles, too much architectural changes, I've seen. But that's the way the journey has been so far. So we are targeting over here 8.0. This is the version that we are targeting over here. Now, I would like to talk about that how we would be building our lab. So we have spoken about the theory part. We understand what an ESXi is and how it works. But how do we deploy it? What are we going to do to set up our lab? Let's talk about it. So for lab, what we will be doing is, like I mentioned earlier, we do not have, physical servers that we can provide everyone, 7 physical servers, or we do not have a capability to provide, 5 or 6 physical boxes to everyone. That is something that even if you take an official training of VMware, they would not give you that. Okay. So what we are doing over here is that we have a good powerful server. It has a good amount of RAM. It has a good amount of CPU. Okay. On this machine, we will be installing either Windows 10 or a Windows 2019. Okay. One of the operating systems we will install. After that, we will install a type 2 hypervisor, which is VMware Workstation. Like I mentioned yesterday, VMware Workstation is the type 2 hypervisor, which can be basically used at a personal level learning R&D. So this is the application that we will deploy. And then what we are going to do is that we are going to build our lab. Within VMware Workstation, we will build our lab. So we will create 3 ESXi's. We will create a directory server on which we will have DNS, DHCP, AD. That's the role that we would have over here. Okay. And then we will deploy a SAN server, emulated SAN. This is what we're going to do. So these 3 boxes will be ESXi. This one will be my AD server, and this will be my storage box. And all these machines will be residing in Workstation. Okay. So let me repeat myself. I am not here to teach you VMware Workstation. Okay. We are only using VMware Workstation so that we can build our lab. That's the only intention that we have. Okay. Cool. So how we would install and build the lab, let me basically show you quickly. And then we will proceed with the ESXi installation. So what we're going to do is that you would have a VMware Workstation setup. So you just need to make a right click on it, run as administrator, and just proceed with the installation. The VMware Workstation installation is very simple. You keep hitting next, nothing fancy, and the product gets installed. So let's wait for it to go through. I want to do everything from scratch, in front of you so that, you are comfortable while you are building your own lab. I could have done everything in the background, but that's not what the intention is. The intention is that you should learn the product. So keep hitting next, accept the license agreement. Nothing fancy over here. Install this enhanced keyboard. You might have to go for a reboot. That's fine. We'll go for it. Keep hitting next, 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 next. Nothing fancy. Now you can use VMware Workstation, for a period of 30 days as a trial, or you can put in a license key also, and you can activate the product.
So this product is activated on the PC or something else, different machine.
Yeah, so it's a PC that I have, and it has a good amount of CPU and RAM. And on that PC, I am installing VMware Workstation.
Okay, and what kind of the required PCs for configuration?
So we would expect you to have at least 12 cores or 8 cores as a bare minimum, okay, and 64 GB of RAM and close to about 512 GB of SSD. This is what we would recommend you to have. Now I'm going to pause my screen for a moment. I will put in the license key. Okay, I
So
entered the license key.
license keys is provided by the ESX for temporary.
Yeah, so what would happen basically is that we can provide you the license key offline. That's okay, no problem.
Okay.
So it will be on our labs, so we can talk about it. So I am just rebooting my machine now because after the installation of the VMware, I'm sorry, of the um, product, I just need to go for a reboot.
Workstation.
Correct. After the installation of Workstation, we just need to go for a reboot once so that, it basically comes back up real quick. Okay, someone is not able to hear me. Let me uh, quickly reply them on the chat. Could be some issue with their headphones. Can't hear any audio. It seems to be an issue with your headset. Everyone else can hear it. Try rejoining. Okay, my machine has booted up. Let me quickly share my screen again. Okay. So what I've done is that I've gone ahead and I've installed VMware Workstation. Let me open up the application. Okay. So now what do I need to do is I need to create my virtual machine. How would I do that? It's very simple. You just need to make a right click over here, or you can click on File anywhere, and then you will see an option of New Virtual Machine. Bilal, you have a question? My humble request, if you do not have a query, please be on mute. So I would choose a custom option over here. Proceed with the virtual machine installation. I will install the operating system later. I would be installing it a Windows 2019 machine. Okay, here is Windows Server 2019. Now, what is a virtual machine? What I'm doing right now is I am creating a virtual machine. So when I talk about virtual machine, a VM, a virtual machine, is a logical representation of your physical machine. So like you have a physical server, when you logically represent it, you basically call it as a virtual machine. Okay. And a virtual machine is a group of files. So the name says virtual machine. It's not a physical machine. It says virtual machine. So virtual machine means that, it is a group of files. Now here, I've been asked that where do I want to keep the group of files? Because end of the day, when you are creating a VM, it has to create a lot of files. Where do you want to keep the files? I am basically on a Windows machine. So that is why it is asking me to basically prompt, tell me that, where the, files have to be kept, on which volume, on the C drive or on the or on the D drive, or wherever it is. Okay. So this is why it is basically asking me that, browse for a location. Where do you want to save the files? So here I'll go in the C drive. I'll basically create a folder called lab. And in lab, I'll create a VM called DC01, which will be my domain controller 01. And this could be Windows or Linux, whichever directory service you are comfortable in, you can do that. 8 cores is more than enough. 16 GB RAM is more than enough. Okay, 60 GB hard drive is more than enough. Okay. And now what I've done is that I've created a virtual machine. Okay. Now, before I go ahead and show you that, how the operating system gets installed, there is one more thing that we need to keep in mind. That is, we would be creating over here close to about 5 machines because 3 of them will be ESXi's, and then the other one would be my domain controller, and then the last one would be my emulated storage. Now, these machines have to talk to one another. They have to be on the same network so that, they can talk to one another. So there are multiple ways, via which you can achieve this on VMware Workstation. What we will be doing is in VMware Workstation, you have got something called as a private network. Okay. I'll use one of the private networks of VMware Workstation, and I would have every machine residing on that same private network. I will give them a same IP, and then, everyone will be able to communicate to one another. Okay. If you basically go through the product VMware Workstation, you would be able to achieve it via many ways. This is one of the way via which I can get my machines to talk to one another. Okay. So how would I do that? On VMware Workstation, you basically go to edit and you have something called as a virtual network editor. You click on the add network over here and I'll choose VM19. These are all, the private networks that I was referring to that VMware Workstation gives you. So I'll choose VM19 over here and I would add that network. I will uncheck the option of DHCP assigning the IPs and all that. And basically I will hit apply and OK. Now what I will do is this machine DC01, I will basically map it to the internal network, which is VM19 over here. So all the machines that I would be creating on VMware Workstation, I will be mapping them to VM19. Like I mentioned that there are multiple other ways via which you can get your machine, talking to one another. Whichever way you are comfortable, you can do that. I basically, just choose this option. This is the most comfortable for me. Okay. Now I need to install the operating system. Okay. So I have only created a virtual machine. You need to give the ISO and you need to install it. This is something that you will have to do on your own. The operating system will not get installed automatically over here. Okay. So you have to map an ISO image. How do you map an ISO image? So to map an ISO image, you basically need to make a right click on your machine that you have, go to settings, go to CD drive over here, and then you see this option of use ISO image. You click on this option, click on the browse button, and the ISO image that you have, you choose that. So for example, it's Windows 2019 for me. I'll choose that, hit the OK button. And now what I've done is I have mapped my ISO with the virtual machine. Okay. Now I need to reboot my virtual machine, so I can hit this button, which is basically sending Control Alt Delete, so that my machine gets rebooted. Okay. And now I get the option to install Windows. You basically press any key, and now the regular Windows installation will begin. Okay. So if you are installing Windows on a physical server, or Linux on a physical server, or any operating system on a physical machine, if you install that operating system on VMware Workstation, it will exactly be the same. VMware does not make any changes to the operating system or does not customizes the operating system in any way. The way you have been used, the way you have been, installing the operating systems on the physical machines, the same process, the same method needs to be applied on the VMware Workstation as well. There is not even a single change that VMware does when you are installing an operating system on a VMware platform, be it ESXi or be it VMware Workstation. Okay. So let nobody tell you that um, VMware makes any changes in any way to the operating system. Absolutely, it does not. Okay. So you are just booting the ISO on VMware platform. This is the same way you would have installed the operating system on a physical machine as well. So there is hardly any difference. Again, you will get to see the same windows that you have been seeing before for the operating system installation. So these are the regular windows that you will see for the operating system installation. Nothing fancy, nothing to talk about. Just keep hitting next and proceed with the operating system installation. Now, let me trigger this operating system installation, and then let me switch gears and talk about how would you install an ESXi. Okay, let me answer that question. What are the things that you have to keep in mind when you're installing ESXi? Okay, so there are a couple of things that you should be absolutely sure about. So let me answer those questions for you so that when you are installing ESXi in your physical environment, you know what to check. You know what are the prerequisites, what are the things that you have to keep in mind. Okay, so this will basically initiate the installation of the operating system. Fair enough. Let me minimize this window, and now let me talk about ESXi. So we spoke about yesterday that ESXi is a type 1 hypervisor that you get from VMware. Okay. Now, with any operating system, nowadays, gone are the days, you will get a CD or a DVD. You will only get an ISO file. Okay. Now, there are two things to keep in mind when you're installing ESXi. The first is that you will get an ISO. There is no more a physical CD. Okay. So the first thing that you have to keep in mind when you are installing an ESXi is that the hardware should be compatible. You need to install ESXi on a compatible hardware. If your hardware is not compatible, do not run your production on it. This is what my suggestion will be. Why the hardware needs to be compatible? Let me answer that question now. So what VMware does is that VMware will basically do a lot of testing on the hardware. So there are a lot of hardware vendors available. For example, Dell, IBM, Lenovo, Fujitsu, um, Cisco. So many hardware manufacturers are out there which can basically provide you a server. So what VMware does in the background is there is a certification process. So VMware will basically in their lab make sure that whether the ESXi, when installed on the specific hardware, will run appropriately or not. This is what VMware will do in their lab. When they are happy with the hardware, then they will say that this hardware is certified, for ESXi. So the first thing that you need to make sure that the hardware, the physical machine that you have from HP, Dell, IBM, Lenovo, whichever hardware company that you have, the physical server, is it compatible to run ESXi? This is the first thing that you need to validate. Now, how would you validate? Let me show you that. So you need to open up Google. Yeah. And on Google, just type VMware compatibility matrix. Okay, you will get the first URL. Click on the first URL and open it. Now, VMware has a huge table, that you can basically refer to understand the compatibility. So if you look at this term over here, it says, what are you looking for? I am looking for server and systems. Okay. Now there are again a good amount of details that you can basically click on this drop down menu and you can basically go to if you would like to verify whether a network card is compatible, whether a CPU is compatible, whether your GPU is compatible, whether your storage systems are compatible or not. I mean, there's a huge extensive list that you can refer to validate whether whatever you are about to do is it compatible or not. Here we are concerned with the physical hardware. So what we are doing is that we are selecting that I need to install ESXi version 8. This is what I need to do. And the manufacturer that I have is basically HP. So I have an HP server on which I need to install ESXi. I now need to verify whether my HP hardware that I have, is it compatible or is it supported to install ESXi? So you need to choose ESXi 8, choose your vendor over here, and then click on the button, update and view results. Okay. Here you see this option over here. Just click on this drop down menu and choose 500 so that you can see all the results on a single page. So here you would see all the models from HP which basically support installing ESXi 8. Now, I cannot stress enough, it is absolutely paramount. It is absolutely important. Okay, it is absolutely mandatory that your physical hardware should be listed over here. If your physical hardware is not listed over here, that means your hardware does not support ESXi 8. If it is listed over here, then you can then it is a confirmation for you that your hardware supports 8.0. You do not have to call up anyone. You do not have to call up VMware. You do not have to call up HP or your vendor to verify with them that whether your hardware is supported or not. You basically come to this table, have a look at it. If you see your hardware over there, that means that your hardware is supported and you can basically install ESXi. There would be no concerns later on. Okay. If you do not see your hardware, then you can definitely give a call to your hardware manufacturer, asking them that why their hardware is not listed in this table over here. Okay. The vendor cannot tell you, oh, I forgot we were in the process. Sorry, we skipped it. No, I mean, this does not happen. We are talking at an enterprise level. So these things do not happen at an enterprise level that, sorry, I forgot, or, we skipped updating this hardware over here. That's never something which is going to happen. Okay. So like I mentioned earlier, just make sure that your hardware should be listed over here. Okay. Similarly, you can change your manufacturer. For example, if you have a server from Fujitsu that you would like to verify, then you can click on 8.0, choose Fujitsu. And then, here it would show you all the Fujitsu boxes which are compatible installing version 8.0. Okay. This is the first criteria. This is the first important thing you need to keep in mind when you're installing ESXi is to verify hardware compatibility. Doubts, confusion, question on this point. Okay. The second point. I know my hardware is compatible. I verified, like you told me, and my hardware is listed over there. The question is, from where do I get the ISO? I need ESXi ISO. So from where am I going to get it? Yeah. You should never download ESXi ISO from the VMware portal. So VMware portal does provide you ESXi ISO. How would you find it? You can just basically go to Google and type download vSphere. You would go to the first URL, and then you see this option over here, download ESXi. Go to downloads, and from here you can download your ESXi. You see this ISO? This is the ISO you can download, and here you have the ESXi hypervisor. But do not download this image, please. Okay, I am asking you not to download. Okay, so the question comes from, where are you going to get your ISO? You need to call up your vendor. So for example, HP, Fujitsu, IBM, Lenovo, Dell, Cisco, you need to give them a call. Okay, call up your vendor and tell them that you are looking for an ESXi ISO from them, and they will provide you one. Why do you need the ISO from the vendor? Why should HP give you ESXi ISO? Let me answer that question. So what would happen is, you have a physical machine. Okay. Now your intention is not only to install ESXi. I mean, of course, you want to install ESXi on the hardware and you want to get it to your production, but that is not the only thing that you want to do. You absolutely want to make sure that the drivers and the firmwares on this hardware should be upgraded as well, and they should be aligned to ESXi. This is what you would like to verify. Now, if you download the ISO from the VMware portal, okay, this ISO that I'm referring to, if you download this ISO, this will not have the firmwares and the drivers that you are looking for your hardware. And if you call up your vendor and you get the ISO from them, they will have the firmwares and the drivers and the ESXi. They will have the complete package for you, which is beneficial for you because you do not want to run your production ESXi without upgrading the drivers and the firmwares. Because if you do that, there are very high chances that tomorrow you will run into an issue. And during the RCA, you will get to know about it, or your hardware firmware is not upgraded, or there is some issue with your hardware firmware. So you don't want to run into those scenarios. Okay. So before you install ESXi, before you take it to production, make sure that the drivers and the firmwares of your physical machine, they are absolutely up to date. And the best way to get that done is get the ISO from the vendor. Okay. Vendor will have a documentation. Refer to the documentation on how you should be installing the firmwares and the drivers. Okay. Once that is done, then you can basically install ESXi the way I would show you now. Okay. So to recap, first thing, before installing ESXi, check the hardware compatibility. And the second thing, get the ISO from the vendor. Do not install the ISO. Do not get the ISO from the VMware portal. Doubts, confusion, questions on these 2 points?
Hi. No doubts, but my network got disconnected in between. So you have mentioned a reason why we should take the ISO from vendor, not directly download from. Can you come again with that one?
Correct. So if you get the ISO from the VMware portal, that will not include the drivers and the firmwares. Okay. And you do not want to run ESXi on a hardware which does not have the latest firmware and the driver. You don't want to do that, because if you will do that, you are inviting problem. Okay, that's the
So
reason.
can, can we summarize that the vendor will be giving the ISO image along with driver and the firmware? It's a complete package,
Yes.
right? Okay.
And they would also provide you the documentation on how to upgrade their firmware and the drivers on the hardware. So you need to talk to them. They will give you the details. So for example, if I show you over here, but for here example, if you type HP ESXi ISO. You see over here, HP has a dedicated page wherein you can get ESXi images for HP servers. So like HP, everyone else also will provide you an ISO. Okay. Check with your vendor regarding the specific version that you are targeting. So for example, if you want to get ESXi 8.0, which is the hardware that you have, you basically go to this URL and then you log in and you will have your active contract and then you can get the ISO. If you have issues, call up HP, give them your contract number and then they would help you.
Okay. Okay.
Now, let's take an example that you have verified that your hardware is compatible. Okay, you have the ISO from the vendor and you have basically upgraded the drivers and the firmwares. Okay. Now the question comes, how do you install ESXi? Let me answer that question now. Let me show you a demo now on how do we install ESXi. So to install an ESXi, what you have to do is, now this is my lab. Like I mentioned earlier, we cannot provide you physical boxes on which you can install ESXi because we do not have those many physical boxes. Even if you take uh, official training from VMware, there also they will not provide you physical boxes. There also they will be giving you virtual ESXi machines, on which you will be on which ESXi's will be deployed. There you will not get to deploy ESXi because that's a customized lab that you get, wherein ESXi will already be deployed for you. Okay. So how do we deploy an ESXi? Now let me show you that. So I'm going to create a new virtual machine over here on the VMware workstation, which is basically my hypervisor giving me the platform to create multiple virtual machines. I will click on the other button and here, sorry, I would choose VMware ESXi and then I would choose the version ESXi 7. Okay. Though I am running an older version of VMware Workstation, that is why it shows me ESXi 7. If you download the latest version of VMware Workstation, it should show you ESXi 8 over there. Okay. Now again, this is a virtual machine. So a virtual machine is a group of files. It is basically asking you that where do you want to save these files? So I will again click on the browse button, go to that same location that I was earlier. Here I'm going to create one more folder and I would call it ESXi01. Hit next. Give some CPUs to it. Give some memory to it. Hard drive 10 GB is more than enough. I do not have to give anything additional. 10 GB is more than enough in the lab. Hit finish. Okay. Now I will change the adapter over here because I want it to be part of that internal network so that my machines can talk to one another. And I would choose VMnet 19. Okay. And then I will map my ISO. I have not mapped the ISO till now. So I need to click on CD DVD option. I will use the option map my ISO image. And this is what my ESXi ISO is. Okay. Now this is something that I've downloaded directly from the VMware portal. But like I mentioned, you do not have to do this. You have to get the ISO from your vendor. This is my lab, so I am allowed to make any changes that I feel like because nothing production would be running over here. I will map my ISO and now I will power on my machine.
So basically, in organizations, they install a first workstation and then VMware.
No, you would install ESXi directly on the physical machine.
Okay.
This is my lab. That's the reason I'm doing it in a workstation. So now, when I was installing Windows, you remember there was a message over there that said Windows is loading files and then it started booting up. Similarly, is going to happen over here as well. it would say that, ESXi is loading files. Now I'm hitting the up and down arrow key on the keyboard. That is why, there is a timer. If you look at the bottom left, you would see automatic boot in 5, 4, 3, 2. And then if you hit the key on the keyboard, it basically comes back to 5 again. Okay. So now what I'm doing is I am basically booting from the CD drive because there is nothing in my hard drive. It is absolutely blank. That's the reason I am booting from the CD drive. Yes, Neeraj, you are right. For lab, I downloaded the ISO from the VMware portal. Now look at this message over here. This message that you see, okay? Look at this message over here. So when you click on this black window, okay? Now you look at the message, it says to return to your computer, press Control Alt. So what would happen is when you click on this black box, your mouse is going to get stuck. If you move your mouse will not be released. So to release your mouse, you need to hit Control Alt, and that is what the message says at the bottom left, where I've highlighted in green. Okay. So when you hit um, Control and Alt, then your mouse is released, and then you are free to move your mouse. If you want to go inside, you can hit Control G, or you can simply click on it, and then you would go in. And then again, to release your mouse, you need to hit Control Alt, and then your mouse will be released. Okay. So I'm waiting for my ESXi to start booting up. Now, let me talk about one more thing while it is booting up. So what would happen is every ESXi has a build number. Okay. What is a build number? I told you that I am installing ESXi 8, but which exact version of 8 you have? Do you have 8.0? Do you have 8.0 update A? Do you have 8.0 update B? Do you have 8.0 update 1? Do you have 8.0 update 2? Which update are you running specifically? How would you figure out that in 8 version, which exact build you are running at? So for that, you have to basically look at the build number. Okay. So what you have to do is you just need to go to Google and type over here ESXi build number. You will get the first URL. Open that URL over here. And now you see over here, these are the build numbers. So this build number will tell you that exactly you are on which update. So this build number is very helpful that, whenever you are in your environment and you would like to understand that which exact release, you are running on, and this is the way you can verify with your build number. Very handy thing, to have this information.
And in fact, I build number is less, and we need to upgrade something else, new packages. Then in this case, downtime is required.
No, no downtime is required. I'll talk about the upgrade in the end, not right now.
Okay.
So this will be too early right now to talk about the upgrade. So you see this build number written over here. So you would like to know what is 205.13097. Though it says ESXi 8, but which exact version of 8 you have. So what you need to do is you need to come over here and you see this number 13097, the last 5 digits. You basically do a Control F, 13097, and it will tell you that you are running an ESXi GA version. The general availability, the first release of the ESXi 8, that is what you have. Okay. And this is the way you can verify that which exact build number of ESXi you are running. So here, I am installing ESXi in a VMware workstation. That is why it says VMware Inc. If you were installing ESXi on your physical machine, it would have said HP server over here. Go for it, Bilal.
Okay, and how
Sir,
is there any
sir, may
mention about
I
the
know,
stability?
Sorry, one at a time. Dinesh, please hang on. Yeah, Bilal, say that again.
sir, may I know what are the hardware requirement for VMware 8.0?
So I told you, you need to verify the hardware compatibility guide. Check for the hardware over there, and then you will get to know that whether your hardware is compatible or not.
Okay.
So you need to
I have one question. Regard.
please wait for a minute. Please wait for a
Yeah,
minute.
sure.
So Bilal, you need to check your hardware over here. You remember this point when I was telling you? So whichever hardware you have, you need to verify that whether your hardware is compatible or not. So if your hardware is compatible, then only you can install ESXi, else do not
Uh,
uninstall it.
yes, sir, correct. But if you go for any OS installation, so first the prerequisites for their RAM and CPUs and all. No?
Correct. So the point is when you're installing an ESXi, you will have at least, 500 GB of RAM on that box. I mean, ESXi requires a minimum 6 GB RAM, but you will never have a 6 GB RAM, on your ESXi. We are not talking about the home labs, we are talking about enterprises. So on an enterprise, when you will get an HP server, that will have at least 500 GB of RAM or 700 GB of RAM or 1 terabyte of RAM. Okay. The number of cores that you will have will be minimum 24, and beyond that, whatever you can have. So the point is that whatever the minimum numbers are, they do not play a part in the organization because you get the hardware with a lot of resources. In your physical lab, in your physical home lab, or where if you are practicing, if there you want to install ESXi, then make sure that you give at least 8 cores and give at least 12 GB of RAM. This is what you need to do in your lab.
For the ESXi OS installation, correct, na, sir?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Any other
Thank you.
question, Bilal, you
Clear.
have?
No, sir. Thank you very much. Clear.
Go, go for it. Someone else had any other question?
Yeah, Nitesh. So I have one question regarding hard disk space. So
Hmm.
while installing in lab, it recommends for 145 GB hard disk for
10 GB is
ESXi.
more than enough.
Okay. Even if
10
I'm in,
GB
okay.
for the
And
ESXi. If you're installing it in production, just get an SSD of 64 GB and install ESXi on that. That should be more than enough.
okay. And if I have to install a vCenter on that ESXi, in that case, how much hard disk I should have?
So what you will do is when you're installing vCenter, you will get the storage from the SAN. The sandbox that you have in your environment, you will basically get the storage from there. You will not be having local storage. Okay.
Yeah,
So that's
correct.
the reason you do not have to worry about local storage on the hardware, because on the hardware, you only have one single hard drive. You install ESXi on it, and that's about it. You do not worry about, the virtual machines, because the virtual machines will basically be storing their storage on the remote storage. That is what they will be
Yeah.
doing.
Okay.
Okay.
So for
Oh,
lab, I think 10 or 20 GB will be more than sufficient, right?
only for
And
the ESXi installation. When you
in in,
create the,
in organizations,
uh,
they're using the SanDisk for ESX installation.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
Dinesh, allow me a minute. So Nitish, to answer your question, yes, in the lab, you need only 10 GB to install the ESXi. Okay.
No.
But to create the virtual machines, you need to map the storage
Mhm.
onto the ESXi. How
Yeah.
we will do that, I would show that to you.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Dinesh, what was your question? Go for it.
In organization, the ESXi was using the SAN storage.
Yes, you would have a SAN storage that you will have to use, that you will have to map, and then there you will be keeping your virtual machine files.
Okay. And my second question is, when we are install some OS, so we can check the compatibility. Okay. So is
With
that
the
case?
with the operating system, you do not have to worry about it, because if you're installing Windows or Linux,
No, no. My
you are
question is what? In ESX level, there are some checking the compatibility, stability, something else, version stability, and any
no,
guideline.
you only need to make sure that if you are installing version 8.0, you need to verify that your hardware should be compatible, and that's about it. every ESXi version 6, 7, 5, 4, 3, 2, everyone is stable and ready production grade. But with time, the old operating systems basically are not supported like any other vendor. So you just need to install the latest version of ESXi, which is supported on a supported hardware, and you should be good.
I have a question. So, as you have mentioned that we need to check the compatibility. Okay, but there may
Mhm.
be practices where they, without compatibility, they will be updating the IIS. Is that the practice that we have seen in industry?
I am sorry,
That,
there's a lot of background noise. I'm not able to get you, Arshad.
okay.
Um,
So what I was trying to say is that without checking the compatibility, is the in industry does they do
no,
uh,
no,
update?
they don't
Okay.
do that. You need to make sure that your hardware should be listed over here. If your hardware is not listed over here, then please do not install ESXi on that box.
And suppose if someone installs, then
It's your mistake. You
then
are
what will be
installing ESXi. Tomorrow, you will not get support from VMware. You can
okay?
run ESXi on a non-supported box, but when you will log a case with VMware, you will not get support. That is the drawback that you will have on installing ESXi on a non-supported hardware. You can run it. If you run into issues, VMware will not give you any kind of a support. You are basically on your own.
So out and out, what we can say if we'll go with this approach, which is not ethical maybe or not preferable, if we'll
Mhm,
go without checking the hardware compatibility, even if the someone goes with the EXSI installation,
mhm.
so we ultimately will not getting the support this right, but
Correct.
it will work
It's not a
on ground.
guarantee that it will work
Okay,
because that hardware has not been tested. So
okay, it
you are
may work or
basically
it may not work.
right. It is basically a hit and trial that you are doing. There is no guarantee that it will work. If it works, good for you. If it does not work, it's good for you.
Yeah.
Hey Hussam, go for it, buddy.
Yes, first of all, hi. I'm sorry for also being late.
No problem.
Also, I will not, yeah, I will not be stable because many of work today. My question is, I'm coming late. I don't know either you would talk about IOPS or not yet. This is the first question. IOPS.
Uh, I did not get you.
IOPS, there is regarding the storage, I mean, there is IOPS. We asked you yesterday when you mentioned it. I don't know. Either I accent it well or not. IOPS.
Oh, IOPS.
Uh-huh.
IOPS.
You
Okay, yeah.
yeah you talked about it or not yet?
No, no, no. So IOPS, we will not be talking about it right now, Hussam. This is too early
Okay,
to talk
too
about
early.
IOPS.
Okay,
Too
okay. So
early.
my okay. Current
We will talk.
current.
We will talk about IOPS when we basically read the storage section. When we will talk dedicatedly about ESXi storage, then we will talk about IOPS.
Okay, okay. Sorry because I miss. I think I lack it. Okay,
No problem.
another question is there any virtualization lab in the cloud to install like Microsoft and other third parties, other providers? Is VMware provided this virtual labs to install our ESXi and our lab?
So VMware has a program called HOL, which is called a hands-on lab. A hands-on lab is a VMware functionality wherein you can check the features which are available. You cannot do any installation. Everything is pre-built for you.
Ah,
So you cannot
okay,
install anything. Okay. It is, think
mhm.
about it, it is a recorded session. Okay. So you keep
Okay,
hitting
okay,
next and you keep looking at the functions, the functionalities, and that's about it. You cannot make
okay.
any changes over there. It is only a simple walkthrough that you have to follow the guide, and that's about it.
It's such a POC. You have to just
Correct.
take. Okay, okay, great.
Keep hitting next. The windows will automatically keep coming up. You hit next, the username and the password automatically gets entered over there. You keep hitting next and it will take you to the relevant windows. If you click
Mhm.
anywhere else, it will not respond to that click because it is
Okay.
only designed in a way that it can only do a limited number of things for you.
It's cloud based.
It is a cloud based, and this is called
Mm-hmm.
hands-on lab. So
And
every VMware feature, every product has its own hands-on lab, but it's very basic. Nothing
mm,
significant you will learn over there.
okay. Anyhow, if you don't mind to give us the link here to access it, or
Okay,
also it's not
just
limited, time limited.
yeah, it is basically for 2 hours. So you just go to
Oh,
VMware, just go to Google and type hands-on lab.
hands-on lab, VMware hands-on lab. Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
you will get the
yeah,
URLs and then you can basically request for whichever demo that you would like to go through.
yeah, okay. More than enough. Thanks.
No problem. Anyone else has any questions? Okay. So now we booted the ESXi from the ISO. Okay. And let's read the message that we see over here. It says, welcome to the installation. Okay, very horrible color. Let me change the color. Not matching over here. Okay. Welcome to the ESXi installation. Okay, very good. Now read the first line. ESXi 8 installs on most systems. So the first line says that if you want to install ESXi 8, it will get installed on most of the systems, no problem. Okay. But read the second line. But only systems on VMware compatibility guide are supported. That means VMware on the very first window clarifies that your hardware should be compatible. It is not going to do a compatibility check for you. It is basically telling you that here is a URL. Go and check for yourself that whether your hardware is compatible or not. Okay. If your hardware is not compatible, tomorrow you run into issues. So when you will log a service request, when you will log a case with VMware, technical support engineer will basically get to know about it in 2 minutes. In less than 2 minutes, he will get to know about it that you are running on a non-supported hardware. Okay. And he will drop you an email stating that you are running on a non-supported hardware. I cannot give you any support. Hence, I am closing the SR. And no matter what you do, no matter how high you try to escalate, VMware will not give you support on it because you are running on a non-supported hardware. Okay. So VMware basically clarifies on the very first screen that your hardware should be compatible. And if you agree to it, and if you are verified, then hit enter and continue. If you do not agree to it, hit the escape button and you basically exit out from the installation. Is the first window clear to everyone or anyone has any questions over here? Okay. This is my lab. So I'll proceed because I do not have to call up VMware. I know that, this is not a real hardware that I have, but that's okay. I will hit enter and then it says license agreement. Now, whether you like it or you don't like it, you have to agree to the license agreement. Okay. There is nothing that you can do about it. So you need to hit F11 and then you basically agree to license agreement and then, you proceed. Now here it would show you your hard drive. So when I was creating my ESXi, I only had one hard drive of 10 GB, which was highlighted in yellow. And here I need to install my ESXi, which is my local hard drive. Okay. So it is already highlighted in yellow because that's the only one. I will hit enter and I would continue. Now here it says, what will be your keyboard layout? Okay. So depending on, whichever part of the region you are, you can choose your relevant keyboard layout. I am in India. For me, US default is okay. So I will choose this option and hit continue. Now here, you see this option over here that says enter a root password. Why the word root? Because ESXi is Linux based. Anything which is based on Linux, you would have by default root. Okay. So that is why they are asking you to put in a password. There is no default password that ESXi has. When you're installing ESXi, you need to give a password, and that password you need to refer later. Okay. Now, when you are entering the password over here, it will be all in asterisks. I mean, there is no way for me to change this into characters. I cannot do that. Okay. When you have typed your password on the first line, then you basically need to hit the down arrow key and type your password again. Now, if your passwords do not match, it would say very clearly that passwords do not match. Okay. Now, when it says passwords do not match, no matter how many times you hit the enter key, nothing would happen. You cannot proceed to the next window. Okay. You can only proceed to the next window when it says over here passwords match. Okay. So when it says passwords match, then only you can proceed to the next window. And there is no way for me to flip this around and show you the characters. Okay. So this is something that you cannot do over here. So I'll hit enter now and I will proceed. And now it says that, okay, I am about to install ESXi on that local 10 GB hard drive. When I do that, I am going to repartition that hard drive. Whatever you had, any kind of data on that hard drive, it will be gone forever. And there is no way for you to recover that data if you had any on that local 10 GB hard drive. Do you want to continue or not? If you want to continue, you need to hit F11. You're not hitting enter over here because if you hit enter, nothing is going to happen. You need to hit F11. So when you hit F11, that means you are agreeing to it, and now you are basically initiating the ESXi installation. This is how you install ESXi. Whether you install ESXi on a physical machine, whether you install it on a virtual machine, you install it on the cloud, you install it anywhere in the world. This is what the process is of installing ESXi. Okay. Couple of enters, couple of F11s, and then, that's about it. That is how you install ESXi. Questions, confusions, if you have any. Okay. So we will wait for the ESXi installation to complete. While this is going on, I will complete my Windows installation. So you remember we had initiated our Windows installation, and here I need to put in a password. So in my lab, I keep one simple password, that is welcome@123. W is in caps. So that's the password I keep. And now I need to log in again over here and put in my password. This installation I am doing on VMware Workstation because I have to set up my lab. On an ESXi, how do you create a virtual machine? How do you install an operating system? This is something that I will talk about later, not right now. Right now, our intention is to build a lab. And then in that lab, we are basically going to set up our ESXi and then basically run everything. Okay. Okay. Now, let me talk about something in theory, and then let's do the practical. So let's say that you have a desktop at home. Okay, let's say this you have a desktop machine at home. And on that desktop machine, let's say that you plan to install Windows 10 or Windows 11. Okay. Now on this desktop machine, you will have a video card, which is a GPU. You will have a sound card. You might have a network card. Okay. You might have, some other card, that you might have on your desktop. Okay. Now, after installing Windows 10, you need to install the drivers. Okay, because you want your monitor should have a proper resolution. There should be sound that should come from your desktop speakers. You should have connectivity to your internet. Your network cards should get recognized. Your USB the USB port should get recognized. Your video should get recognized. Your motherboard controllers should get recognized. All these drivers you need to install on your operating system. Now, Windows 10 and Windows 11 are basically intelligent operating systems, and they can pick up the drivers on their own. It's not necessary now that, with Windows 10 and Windows 11 that you have to install the drivers. They are intelligent enough and they will be able to supply the drivers on your desktop machine. Okay. But the question is, now I am installing Windows on a virtual machine. On a virtual machine, again, this is a logical representation of a physical machine, no? A virtual machine. So on a virtual machine, again, the operating system does not know that whether am I running on a physical machine or I am running on a virtual machine. Operating system has no clue about it. Whether it's Windows or whether it is Linux, both of them have no idea that they are running on VMware platform. Okay. Now, both these operating systems, they need drivers. So they need a video driver, they need a network driver, they need a sound driver, they need a USB driver, they need a controller driver, and so and on and on and on. They need all these drivers. Now the question is that they are running on a VMware platform. From where will they get the drivers? Answer is VMware tools. So VMware has a dedicated package to solve this problem. And that package is called VMware tools. So in VMware tools, you have all the drivers that an operating system wants. Okay. You install VMware tools and operating system will get basically everything, whatever it needs, all the drivers, sound, video, network, audio, keyboard, mouse, whatever it is, controller, USB, whatever the drivers are there on earth, operating system will get all of them because operating system, because it is running on a VMware platform, because it is installed inside a virtual machine, it will not be able to get the drivers on its own. If the operating system was installed on a physical machine, on a physical desktop, then it would have been able to get the drivers. But on a virtual machine, it is not able to get it. So if you create a virtual machine on VMware Workstation, if you create a virtual machine on ESXi, okay, after creating the virtual machine, you will install the operating system. After installing the operating system, what is the next thing that you need to do? You need to install VMware tools. Okay. If you are running your virtual machine on an ESXi, if you're running your virtual machine on a VMware workstation, that does not matter. You have a Windows over here, you have Linux over here, that does not matter. Right after the installation of the operating system, the next thing that you need to do is you need to install VMware tools. There is no if, but, should I do this, should I not do this? These questions should not come up in your mind. Like when we get up in the morning, the first thing that you do is you brush your teeth. Okay, that's unsaid. I mean, as kids, we have been told by our parents that every morning you have to get up and brush your teeth. There is no ifs and buts that should I brush my teeth? Should I not brush my teeth? I mean, you have to brush your teeth, plain and simple. Okay. Similarly is the case with virtual machine. You install an operating system, and right after installing the operating system, you have to install VMware tools. There is no if and but that whether should I install it or should I not install it. Whether will I have a performance problem or whether my application will support it, whether I would run into some issues, nothing of that sort is going to happen. Okay. So you have to install VMware tools. And what are VMware tools? These are basically the drivers for the operating systems, the virtual drivers for your operating system, because your operating system does not know that, whether it is running on a physical machine or on a virtual machine. It needs video, audio, sound, USB controller, motherboard, all those drivers. VMware tools is going to provide it. Any questions on this point anyone has? Okay. Now, we are creating a VM inside a virtual machine. So let's install the VMware tools over here right now. When we will create a virtual machine on an ESXi, then basically I will show you that, how do you install VMware tools over there. Okay. So over here on VMware Workstation, I've created a Windows machine. After installing the operating system, you just need to make a right click on the Windows machine over here, and then you will see this option over here, install VMware tools. Click on this option of install VMware tools. Now, go to your CD-ROM, go to your My Computer, go to CD-ROM, and then you would see over here VMware tools. Double click on it and just initiate the installation. Nothing fancy, nothing technical, nothing out of the box. Simple. Just keep hitting next and install it. Next, 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 install. And now pay attention over here to these messages. Copying new files. Now you see installing VMCI driver. Installing EFWI driver. Installing VMXNet3 driver. Installing PSCSI, USB, PS2 driver. Memory controller driver, HDI, installing video driver. All kinds of drivers, whatever the operating system needs, this package has everything for you. Okay. So you just need to double click and proceed with the installation, and that's about it. It will do everything for you. Now you see this video has gone bigger. Earlier the video was very small. Now it has gone full screen. Why? Because I have VMware tools and it was basically able to install video drivers. Okay. After the installation of the VMware tools, you need to reboot your virtual machine. Okay. This is a new machine that you are creating. There is nothing production running over here. So you don't have to take approval for anyone for any kind of a downtime because this is a virtual machine in creation. There is nothing has been installed on this virtual machine. So if you reboot it, there is no downtime which is going to happen. Okay. So while this virtual machine is getting rebooted.
So basically, in a VM tools, they require reboot, actually.
Yes. When you install VMware tools for the first time, you should go for a reboot.
Okay. So for a production environment, we require downtime.
Buddy, you need to understand, like I mentioned, when you create a virtual machine, then you install VMware tools.
Okay. Okay. Or
When
sometimes,
you are installing an operating system, you have not installed any application, no? Then why a downtime?
okay. But my question is what, when we are creating virtual machine in production environment, so any VMware tools upgrade, something else happen?
We
Or
will
this is
talk
one.
about that in the upgrade section, not right now. It's too early. Okay. So let's wait till the upgrade option, then we will talk about it. Now I will log into my operating system again. So now you see that the screen is big, full screen. Why? Because the video drivers have been installed right now. Okay. Let me change the background over here. I don't like this background. Let me change this to black. It's too flashy for eyes. Okay. Now let's switch gears and let's go to ESXi. So we had initiated the installation of the ESXi. The installation got finished. It basically says hit the enter key and reboot the operating system. I say that's fine. I have hit the enter key. My ESXi will reboot and it will automatically come back up. Okay. Now, this is the way you need to build two more ESXis. So I installed ESXi 1. Similarly, you will be installing ESXi 2 and ESXi 3 in the lab. So you need to have 3 ESXis. Okay. While this is going through, now what do I need to do? I need to build my domain controller. So over here, I need to install my Active Directory. I need to install DNS, and I need to have DHCP over here. These three things I need to do, configure on this machine. Okay. Let me quickly go ahead and do that. Okay. And you can have a look at it. Similarly, you will have to also build your own lab. Now, if you are comfortable on Linux, you can use a Linux operating system. I basically come from a Windows background, so I am comfortable with Windows and setting up things over here. First, I need to disable my firewall. In Windows, firewall causes a lot of issues. So I will disable Windows firewall. Now, I don't want my machine or my monitor to basically sleep on me. So what I will do is I will go to control panel and I will go to the power settings over here. And I will tell my machine that please do not turn off the display. Okay, I don't want you to turn off the display. Okay. Now I need to give a static IP over here. Okay, because there is no DHCP in my environment. This will be my domain controller. So every domain controller needs to have a static IP. IPv6 I'm not going to use. I'm okay with IPv4. So I need to come over here and give a static IP. So the IP range that I will be using in my environment is 10.10.94.10. The subnet mask I will give as 255.255. The default gateway will be 10.10.94.1. And this machine will be my DNS server as well. Okay. So I gave static IP to my domain controller. Now I need to rename my machine. So this machine, if you basically look at it, would have a very fancy name over here. Okay, you see this name over here, a very fancy name. I need to change it, and I would call it CDP DC01. Okay, I will quickly reboot my machine so that I want, the new name should take effect. And here I see my ESXi is kind of booting up. So here you would see that on the ESXi, it would show you that, which processor you have, how much memory you have, and it would show you the model number of your ESXi. I'm running it in VMware Inc. I'm running it in VMware Workstation. That is why, it says VMware. If you were running on an HP server, Dell server, it would have given you a dedicated name. And then here you see the build number that we already spoke about. Okay. Let me quickly finish up my domain controller, and then I will come back over here and I'll explain you how do we set up in the static IP, what this screen is, and what you can do. I will talk more about it. Let me quickly set up this Windows machine first. The reason
Hi,
I'm doing everything. Mhm.
sorry to interrupt. Could you please inform like how much of configuration we have to keep for this DC environment, this domain control environment?
You have 8 GB RAM, 4 vCPUs, 60 GB of hard drive should be more than enough.
So for this, and in this one we are using this 2019, right? I'm sorry, I came a little bit late. It is 2019 or 2022, or we can use any of these things.
Any, whatever you feel like. End of the day, you just need to have a domain controller, DNS, DHCP. You can build that on Windows, any operating system. You can even use a Windows 2003. That should be okay as well.
So
Or if you are comfortable with Linux, you can even use that. I mean, whatever you are comfortable, you can do that. I am just showing you as a reference over here what we can use, but you
yeah.
always have the liberty to, change as you feel like.
Okay, thank you very much.
Now, what I would be doing is I would be installing a head, and creating a new role over here. because I want my domain controller to get installed. So I will click on add roles over here, hit next, and on this machine that I have, I will be installing my Active Directory domain services because I need to promote this server to a domain controller. Now, I was saying earlier that, the intention of doing everything in front of you live is because I want you, when you're building up your lab, you should not have any concerns. I mean, though if you run into issues, I'm here to assist you. However, you just need to follow this video. This is getting recorded, and do the same thing in your lab as well. Like I mentioned yesterday also, we intentionally do not give you a pre-prepared lab because we want you to do practice. We want you to make mistakes because when you do a mistake and when you rectify it, that is something that you will always remember. Okay, so it is important that after this training, you are comfortable working on your production environment. That's the only intention that we have over here.
Hi. Uh, I have one question.
Go for it.
Yeah. Is it good practice to install ADDS, DNS, and DSCP on a single server, or we should install it separately?
Check with a Windows guy. I'm not a Windows guy. Sorry.
No, no problem.
So right after the installation of the role, I would be initiating my domain controller promotion. So I would be following the very standard Windows steps over here. I will create a new forest. I would basically call it as lab.local. And on that lab.local, I will promote this machine, and it will take its sweet time. It will get installed. It will reboot it. And while it is rebooting, then we will basically switch gears, come to this screen, and then I will talk more about this screen, what it is, and what the options are over here. This seems to be taking some time. Okay, let's not wait for this thing to complete. Let me switch gears and talk more about it. Now, this screen that you see over here, this screen you will see when you open up your console. So for example, if you have an HP server, or if you have a Dell server, or you have any other server in the world, there is something called as out of band management tool. Like in HP, there is a tool called ILO. In Dell, there is a tool called DRAC. And then in ASUS, there is a tool called ASUS Rack. Okay. So every enterprise grade, motherboard basically gives you a out of band management tool. This tool basically means that if your server is not responding on the network, how will you get to know what is running on the server? So for example, if I give you a desktop, only a CPU, like a tower, only if I give you a CPU, a desktop box with no monitor, no mouse, no keyboard, and I plug a network cable in and I power on this machine, and if I ask you, tell me what is running on the desktop, how would you get to know what is running on the desktop? Either you will connect to the server on the network, you will do an RDP, or you will do an SSH, and then you can tell me what's running on the server. However, if the server is not responding on the network, how can you tell me what is running on the server? Okay, on this desktop, what is running? You will have to connect a monitor. What is monitor? Monitor is basically giving you the console. Monitor is giving you a display that what you see or what is running on the desktop. This is something which out of band management tool can give for you as well. So for example, if you have a server which is racked and stacked in a Germany data center, okay, you have a server which is in Germany data center and you are in a different country, you are in a different part of the world. And now you want to know that what is running on the Germany data center. How would you get to know about it? You are not there physically. You do not have anyone who can connect the monitor for you and tell you running. So what you have in comes out of band management tool. So for example, for HP, it's ILO. So you will open the ILO console for the server, and ILO will basically show you a console. And there you will get to see that, what is running on the server. Okay. So similarly, think about it. If you have an HP server, and on that HP server, you installed ESXi. Now to connect to the ESXi, you can basically use a command line or you can connect via UI. But what if this ESXi is not responding on the network? What if you cannot ping the ESXi? You cannot reach this ESXi on the UI, then how would you connect to the server? Then to connect to the server, you will have to basically open the out-of-band management tool, which is ILO. When you will open the ILO or an ESXi server, this is the screen that you will see. This screen is called DCUI, Direct Console User Interface. Okay. So any questions on DCUI, when would you see it? Whatever I've told you till now, if you have not understood, please let me know. Okay. Now, when you open the console of your physical box, you will see DCUI. You will see this window over here, and this is called DCUI. So if someone asks you in an interview or in your organization, if someone tells you to log into the ESXi DCUI, so they are basically saying that on whichever hardware your ESXi is running, open the out-of-band management console. So for HP, it will be ILO. For Dell, it will be DRAC. So you need to log into these URLs, to these portals, and then open this window. This is what they are basically saying. Okay. Now, why would you come to this screen? You will only come to this screen in two conditions. What is the first condition? The first condition is when you are installing an ESXi. When you're installing an ESXi, you have to give it static IP. How will you give the static IP? From here, from this DCUI window, you will give a static IP. Okay. This is the first scenario. Why would you open this console page? Okay. The second scenario, if you have an ESXi which is not responding on the network. So you have a HP server on which you installed ESXi and everything was working well, everything was working fine. But somehow this ESXi is now not responding on the network. If a server is not responding on the network, you would like to know what is running on the server. And then you would open out-of-band management tool, and then you would see DCUI. And then you will basically do some basic troubleshooting from here to understand why are you not responding on the network. This is the second scenario. Why would you come to this screen? So there are majority two reasons. One is when you're installing ESXi, you will be on this window because you have to give a static IP. You want to disable IPv6 and all those basic things that you need to do. And the second scenario is when you have a working ESXi and then all of a sudden it stops. Then what do? You want to troubleshoot. You want to look at the console. Then basically you will open this screen over here. Doubts, confusion, question.
To access DUVI, to access DUVI like ILO or
DCUI.
DCUI, like ILO or IDRAC.
Correct.
So we can access it only through browser, or there are other ways to
Only
access
browser.
it? Only browser.
So ILO will you will have a basically URL. So you open the browser, enter the ILO URL, enter the credentials, you log in, then you open the console, and that's about it. Then you will get to this page. ILO is a functionality from HP.
Yeah.
Right?
No. Yes. So one more question. Like on hardware device, where we install ESXi and we configure IDRAC or ILO, so we have separate NIC for that to assign that
Yes.
IP.
Yes.
Okay. Fine.
At the back
Thanks.
of the server, you will find a dedicated port where you would see ILO written over there. That is
Okay.
where you connect your RJ45 cable, and there, you configure your ILO. So this is an HP thing. Check the HP documentation and they will tell you details about it.
Okay. Okay. Fine. Thank you.
Okay.
I,
Yeah, go for it.
yeah, when you're in another country, for example, we are in,
Vijay, let me
yeah,
interrupt you. There is a lot of background noise. I cannot hear you properly. You are not close to the mic. I'm not able to get at all what you are saying. Please come in a silent location where there is less background noise so I can hear you. You are absolutely not audible to me. Sorry for that, but I was not able to hear you. Okay. While you come back, let's proceed. So over here, okay, I think this is installed. Let me hit close and let me proceed with the domain controller installation over here. So here I need to build my new lab, my new forest in my Windows. So I would basically name it as lab.local. I'll hit next. And I need to give a password over here. Again, I'll give that same password that I've been using in the lab. welcome@123. My regular stuff. Keep hitting next. We're not making any changes over here. I'm not here to teach you domain controller. So just keep hitting next and just install, domain controller. That is all that we are looking at. Nothing fancy over here. Okay, this is getting started. So now on this DCUI window, you have basically two options over here. The first option is an F2. The second option is an F12. Now, if you hit the F12 window, you have option of restarting the ESXi, or you want to shut down the ESXi, or you want to restart it. This is something that you can do. How do you do that? So you basically have to hit F12. And when you hit F12, you will be prompted to log in. Now, it is the same password that you had given when you were installing ESXi. You put that password in. And now it basically tells you over here that what you want to do. So you have the option of shutting down F2. You want to restart, you can hit F11. You want to forcefully terminate the VMs, you can do all that stuff. Okay. So basically F12 option is for you if you want to restart your machine, if you want to restart your ESXi. Okay. If you do not want to restart your ESXi, the second option that you have is basically an F2 option. Okay. Here, if you see, it says customize settings. Okay, this is what you want to do. Now, I need to give a static IP over here. So what I will do is I will hit the F2 key, and then again, it would ask me to log in. I will give in the password, welcome@123, the one that I defined during my installation. After giving the password, in a few seconds, it should change. And now you are basically on the configuration screen. Okay. If you want to change the password, you can choose the first option, configure password. You can change it from there. What is lockdown mode? The second option. Why is it disabled over there? I will talk about that later. Here, I need to give the static IP. So I need to go to configure management network, hit the enter key so that I go in that option. Okay. Now, your physical server that you have, now this is my lab. Okay. On a physical machine in your production that you will have, you would have multiple network cards on that physical server. Okay. So you need to verify that the management IP will basically be connecting to which physical server. So you need to choose your physical server, your physical network card over here. This is basically your network card. Okay. So you need to choose your network adapters. that over which you are configuring your management network. So I only have one network card. That is why I see this option. If you have multiple network cards, when you're installing ESXi, you will have multiple network cards. When you will hit the enter key, here you would see all the list of your physical network cards. Whichever network card you want to select, make sure that you have an X on it. X means that this is the network card which is selected. How would you verify that whether that is the network card which is the right one? This is something that you need to do in the data center cabling. When you are cabling your ESXi in your data center and all the network ports. So there you have to do a data center cabling and you have to make sure that you know on which physical switch port it is getting connected to. This is getting connected to where. So all these things you have to keep in mind when you're installing a physical server in your data center, how many network cards it has, where the cables will be connected to, on which switch port they will go. This thing needs to be documented. So whosoever is racking and stacking the server in the data center, it's their responsibility to basically verify with the network team to understand that you know where the cables will go. Okay. So this is again part of the design part. As you are learning the technology, I will not be diving into designing your environment because that will be too much. So here, just keep this in mind that you know you have to basically agree to it that you know which network adapter you would be choosing. Now here you need to give your VLAN as well because every IP in an organization has a VLAN. This is a lab, that is why I'm not giving a VLAN. But in your production environment, give the VLAN, you know, whichever IP is associated with. Now here I need to set up my IPv4 address. Okay. So here I will give an IP over here. So for example, I'll say 10.10.94.12. Okay. I'll give the subnet mask as 255.255.255.0 and my domain and my default gateway will be 10.10.94.1. Okay. Let me initiate a ping over here. Okay, it's getting rebooted. That's fine. Okay. I gave the static IP to my ESXi. I do not want IPv6, so I will disable IPv6. I want my DNS, so I want my DNS server to be 10.10.94.10. What is the name of this machine? The name of this ESXi, I want to name it as CDP ESXi01. This can be as per your organization. Okay. And here I can give a suffix and I can say it will basically belong to lab.local. Okay. So I can fill out all the details. Now I want to come back to the main menu. So when you want to come back to the main menu, you need to hit the escape key. So if you want to come back to the main window, hit the escape key on the keyboard. And then it says that you have made changes over here. Do you want these changes to get applied? Hit yes or no. If you hit yes, it will reboot your ESXi because you disabled IPv6. So I say that, yeah, please do save my changes. And if you have to reboot my ESXi, go for it because I am still installing my ESXi. This is still in the initial phases. So I do not have to worry about, getting a downtime or something. Okay.
Okay.
Go for it.
Network redundancy part, we can do during the installation, so we can do it.
I did not get your question. Please repeat.
Network redundancy.
Network?
Redundancy.
This is something we will do later in the networking section, not right now. How to do that, I will tell you in the networking section. So now I have configured my domain controller. And now when I come over here, and if I initiate a ping, 10.10.94.12, this IP should be reachable for me because both these machines are on the same network. So if you see, this is on VM 19, and this is also on VMnet 19. Okay. I give the same IP range like I was explaining earlier. Wait for a minute, and then it should respond to this IP. Let the ESXi boot up. Okay, it is booting up. Any minute now, it should start responding to IP. Come on. Okay. Come on, respond to IP. Okay, what is the IP address? Okay, it responds now, finally. Now you see, the ESXi is now reachable from my domain controller. Okay, so this will basically boot up, and then, I see my ESXi responding. Okay, so let's keep the class till here for today. Let's meet next time, and then we'll proceed further, wherein I'll show you on how do you access your ESXi, what are the different settings available, and yeah, so we'll talk more about it in the on the next weekend about it. So before we end the class, doubts, confusion, question, if you have any.
I have a question.
Go for it.
Maybe I don't know if it's right time to talk or ask or not. If I want to change IP of ID rack, so I mean, can I go ahead and change it, or I mean, will that impact something to
Please check
SAN
your
or?
vendor. Please check your hardware vendor. You need to check with them. So ID rack is a hardware related information. You need to check with HP or with Dell. They can tell you more about it.
Okay.
Anyone else has any question?
Next,
Yeah, Neeraj, go for it.
Okay, you suppose we have an hardware, but it's hardware support.
Come close to the mic. Neeraj, come close to the mic. I cannot hear you. Your voice
It's
is
audible.
jarring.
It's audible.
Yeah, tell me.
Okay, my question is, I have an hardware, and that hardware should support only 6.5. Okay, but if we install the OS and we go with the VMware workstation with the latest one, so that should be work for it.
I did not get your question. Please repeat.
The question is, I suppose I have a hardware with the high configuration like 64 GB, and with that two hard disk I have. Okay, it's that hard disk. And we have a Xenon processor as well, dual Xenon processor. But that hardware should support only 6.5 ESXi, not more than. So if I go with the OS installation and install the VMware workstations with 19 or 17, the latest one, and can we go with the 8 ESXi server? Is possible
Yeah, of
or
course.
not?
In the lab, if you want to do this, yes, you can do that.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Hussam, you had a question, buddy. Go for it.
no, just I would like to thank you and say Kal Milenge as in Indian, but a lot of is there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, so we'll probably meet next week, and then, we'll continue. Thank you.
It's not tomorrow, by tomorrow.
No, not tomorrow. Tomorrow is the Monday. So
Ah,
we keep classes on weekends. So
yeah,
we'll meet on next weekend.
okay. Thanks. Thanks all.
Cool. Anyone else has any questions before we end the session? All right, everyone. I'll see you on next Saturday. Thank you. Have a lovely week ahead. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you.